Hello all. I just wanted to take a few minutes to continue our read aloud that we were doing prior to school being let out. The title of our read aloud was Emma and the Silver Warrior. I am going to continue with chapter 7. We will continue having our read aloud, hopefully daily. So let's go ahead and start. We're on chapter 7, Good Friday, April 14th, 1865. Emma stared into the mirror the next morning at the red rings of puffiness that circled her eyes. They ached like sunburn. "You're weak," she whispered, and her reflection mouthed the same insult. Crying like a baby, believing that man's lies. Papa is standing tall and strong somewhere right now, fighting Yankees. Emma shut her mouth and wiped around where her door opened. Micah, wearing his boots, clomped into the bedroom, stopped, and stared at his sister. Pointing and smiling, he turned to Jenny, who was standing behind him. Emma's eyes looked like bees have played Ring Around the Rosies on them, and they stung her while they all fell down. Normally, Jenny would have smiled at Micah's humor, but today she stood and just looked from Emma's room. "Emma, your mother wants you in the front parlor." Jenny's hands rested lightly on Emma's shoulders as they walked down the stairs. When they entered the parlor, Mom asked Jenny to leave the door and close it. Emma knew she was in trouble. Mom sat very straight in her chair. She motioned to Emma to sit beside her. Walking slowly towards Papa's chair, Emma dreaded what was surely to come next. Mother's disappointment in her. Drawing in a deep breath through her nose and slowly breathing out, Mama stared at Emma's eyes, then closed her own and shook her head slowly. "Emma," she said, with a soft but stern voice, "your behavior lately has been unacceptable. I know you suffered a great shock at Lily's farm. I shudder to think of it, but smuggling morphine, sneaking out of the church yesterday, running off to the Capitol, calling the lieutenant a liar?" Mother's voice quivered as she recited Emma's misdeeds. She gripped the arms of the chair to calm herself. In a normal voice, she said, "You are to remain here in the house until I give you permission to leave it." "Yes, ma'am." Emma looked down at her lap and clasped her hands. The question she wanted to ask her mother stuck in her throat like dry cornbread. She opened her mouth to speak, but coughed instead. Mother placed her hand on Emma's and squeezed. "Emma, what is it?" "Do you believe Papa has surrendered?" she asked. "It will be a blessed thing, Emma, for Papa to hold us in his arms when he returns, you, me, and a son he hardly knew. Now, go eat your breakfast and help Jenny clean the kitchen." Emma helped Jenny with all the chores that morning. They didn't talk much. In the early afternoon, Mother said Emma could go with Jenny to her room. Micah raced back to the door ahead of them and disappeared. Emma sat and stared into Jenny's fireplace. A few coals from the early morning fire still warmed the air. "Jenny, do you think Mother still loves Papa?" "Laws, child, what kind of question is that? I don't know many women who loves their men half as much as your mama loves your daddy." "Then how can she believe the Yankees' lies, Jenny? You know Papa hasn't surrendered. He never would. How could Mother believe he has?" "I know it's hard for you to understand, but your mama isn't thinking about winning or losing or surrendering. She's thinking about her man and hoping he be safe and on his way home. Jenny, have you ever been in love?" "I love this family." "Jenny, you know I don't mean that kind of love. I mean, have you ever loved a man?" "Emma, does you dream up questions in that head of yours to addle me? Where I'm going to find a man to love who's colored and free? I ain't never seen such a creature." "So you're never going to have your own children?" "Well, I'll be." Jenny stared at Emma and slowly shook her head. There'd been a lot of stirring and head shaking all day. "You baffle me, child. You ought to know I'm too old to think about having my own children. Anyways, you and Micah are my dillies, and I sure don't need any more than you two." Jenny's bed jiggled. "Michael Franklin Graham, Jenny said sternly. "Are you under my bed spying on my sister and me, on your sister and me?" Sliding on his belly and scraping the floor with the toes of his boot, Micah scooted from under Jenny's bed. "You're Mr. Big Ears listening in on talk that's private," Jenny scolded him. "I closed my ears and didn't listen to you," Micah said. "I'm glad to know that," Jenny smiled. "Have you?" he asked Jenny. "Have I what? Have you ever loved a man?" Micah asked. Jenny sighed and rolled her eyes. "I'm sure I loved my daddy," she said. "You had a daddy?" Micah sounded surprised. "What you think, Mr. Big Ears? I just sprung up full grown in a hollow tree trunk?" Micah's giggles returned. "I was just 3 years old when I was bought by Mr. Ackley and taken to his place. I don't recall much before that except two things." "What two things?" Emma asked. "One happy thing, one scary thing." "Tell the happy one first," Micah insisted. "I remember walking beside a lot of water, moving water, and this soft wind blew in my face. I walked between a man and a woman, each one holding my hand. I think I must have been my mama and my daddy. All I know is I was happy." A smile creased Jenny's face as she gazed up towards the ceiling. "Now tell the scary thing," Micah said, placing his hand up beside his ears to cover them if the story got too scary. "I remember being so scared it still dries my mouth up to think about it. I couldn't move my feet, felt like it was on fire, and then nothing, just blackness." Jenny continued to stare into a distance, but a look of horror replaced her smile. "That's it?" asked Micah, lowering his hands. "It don't sound much like, but child, I don't want you to ever be as scared as that remembering is to me." All was quiet once again in Raleigh that evening. In the back parlor, Emma stared at a smoking stand that held Papa's cold and dusty pipe. Jenna repaired Micah's slingshot by cutting a section off the elastic to shorten it, retying it around the stick, and pulling it taut. Micah counted his stockpile of hickory nuts. "I'm down to 7 nuts," he said. "I'll need more than that when the Yankees come to our house." "They won't come here, dear," Mother reassured him. Micah looked disappointed. "Are you sure they won't come? They came to Aunt Lily's way out in the country." "But we're in the city, son, and the Yankees here are not the ruffians that attacked Lily's farm. I don't want you to worry." "Don't you worry, Mother. I only have 7 nuts left, but Mr. Blaylock has hickory trees, and she said I could come help myself to as many of those nuts I could carry." Suddenly, a loud knocking at the front door, caused all of them to jump. Micah grabbed his repaired slingshot from Jenny's hand. All followed Mother down the hall to the front door. On the porch stood Lieutenant Round. "Good evening, Miss Graham." "Miss Graham?" "Because of the disaster at your sister's farm, I've brought a guard to protect your house. This is Private Corey Phillips." The lieutenant stepped aside and revealed a young soldier. His yellow hair and his blue eyes reflected the glow of the old lamp that Mother held. Private Phillips raised his hand in a salute to Mother, but before his fingers touched his cap, he grabbed his cheek and yelled, "Ouch!" Mother whipped around, and there stood Micah, holding up his slingshot while he fumbled in his pocket for another hickory nut. "Micah!" Mother shook her finger at him. Jenny grabbed Micah and pushed him behind her. Mother turned to the soldier. Oh my," she said in a shaky voice. "Whatever can I say, Private Phillips? I don't know what has come over my son." The soldier stared at the porch. He bent down and picked up the hickory nut, which had raised a red welt on his face. Emma held her voice as silence hovered in the air like a storm cloud. "It's a sad state of affair, ma'am, when you're reduced to fighting with slingshots and nuts," the soldier said. He turned to Lieutenant Round and grinned. "I don't believe this house needs any more protection, sir." The two men began to laugh. Mother joined in, relief flooding her face. Jenna smiled as Micah pecked up from her skirt. Lieutenant Round squatted on his heels and motioned for Micah to come to him. Micah shifted forward, scraping his boots and head hung low. "May I see your weapon, son?" the lieutenant asked. Micah held out his fork-shaped stick, the elastic drooping again. "You're very resourceful, young man, using what at hand and defend yourself and your family. I admired that. But you can turn that job over to Private Phillips now." "You mean he's not a Yankee?" Micah asked. "Well, yes he is," the lieutenant said, "but he has orders to protect this family at all costs. He is going to make camp here in your front yard. You can sleep at night knowing you are safe and watched over." "You're so kind, Lieutenant," Mother said, offering her hand. He stood and took her small hand in his. She then held out her other hand to the soldier. "And thank you, Private Phillips. I'm so sorry. No offense taken, Miss Graham. And please call me Corey." Before Emma went to bed that night, she glanced out of her window at Corey's white tent in front of her house. The light from his lantern flickered as she watched a shadowy outline of him climbing onto his cot. It was the first time since returning from Aunt Lily's that she had gazed out of a darkened window and not feared that Charlie's dirty, sneering face would suddenly lunge at her from the outside. Emma shook her head and climbed into bed. Her words was just too strange of late. Too strange for words. So strange that she had not spoken since the knock sounded at the Grahams' front door. That's the end of chapter 7. I look forward to seeing you all again really soon. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll talk again shortly.